What you are about to listen to is a class from the Death Emissary Death Doula course. In this video, we are talking about the web and the well in concept and in practice. If you want to go deeper, build your own foundations in spirit and soul work, I encourage you to join us for our next session. I'll put the link in for more information down below in the description box. We are also running an early bird special right now to help out those who are feeling the financial crunch. So let's get started. Good morning and welcome back, everyone. So today we are talking about the web and the well. And we're going to be talking about its structures, how it works, what it looks like, how to conceive it in different visualization ways. Because in the end, the web and the well are what we work with. The web is something everybody works within. And the well is something everybody goes through. So we're going to start with the web. And I put two pictures up for you to have a little bit of a visualization. The web is the energetic schematic of everything. It is what holds everything. It is what everything is created from. It is how everything is interconnected. The web itself is made of patterns and the bond between patterns. So if you look at the top picture and imagine that little ball as a pattern. The pattern could be anything. The pattern could be you as a person. It could be a concept. It could be, an emotion. It could be a system. All kinds of ways you can view these patterns. And there are patterns within patterns. So like the pattern of love has all kinds of other small patterns within it. It has relationships. It has romance. It has family, it has joy and happiness and sorrow and sadness and pain and growth. It is connected to all these small patterns because all of these are part of the larger love pattern. So you have large patterns, you have small patterns, and they're all interconnected. When you see the little strings, these little strings of energy coming out of that ball, these are the bonds. That pattern is bonded to a bunch of different other patterns, to a bunch of other different modes. And together, all of this creates a very intricate web. And you can think of it from a flat kind of a surface. You can think of a spider web and all the little points that the web connects. You can think of it in the similar picture that's in the bottom side of this whole energetic network. And so you've got all these tiny little patterns, and some are smaller, some are brighter, and they're all interconnected in this huge 3D web. You can also think about it from a status of universe. So think about the universe and its makeup, not the universe specifically as a thing, but its makeup. So the web itself would be the entire universe. And then you have certain patterns. And you can think of these like planar patterns because not all the patterns are interconnected in a deep way. Because maybe that energetic plane is farther from us. So you've got all these solar systems. Some are closer and more connected. Some are farther, so that connection's really, really weak. And some are so far out, you have to do hopping through some to get to that. And then think about the solar system as this plane, this physical plane that we are on right now. And we have all of our little inner connections. We've got our large patterns that really kind of govern, and then you've got all the smaller patterns that are connected to, and then the wispy little patterns that are just kind of in and out. And, Some have higher connection, some have lower connection. So these are ways to try and conceive of what the web is from a visual standpoint or from an understanding standpoint. The bonds between patterns, again, this is all energy, so they're energetic bonds. The closer and the more connected, the larger, the stronger that energetic bond. The less connected, the less used, the way of thinking about it from, what we really, really pay attention to and what we interact with all the time versus the things we don't interact with very often, but occasionally. So they're going to be smaller. They're going to not be as strong as the ones we're constantly connecting to. And as we grow and change, our bonds grow and change. Some may lessen, some may strengthen, we may make new ones. And then every bond we connect with. So when you connect with a guide, when you connect with an ancestor, you are connecting to that pattern, but you're also able to tap and get into all the patterns that they're connected to because that bond's there. You build your bond very strongly with that pattern, and you're able to tap and access all their bonds of what they're connected to. Everything that we deal in is energy. Everything is made of energy. It is the mode, but it's also the currency. We think about currency in such a different way from our societal aspect. But when we deal in life, when we deal in nature, when we deal in these bonds, it is energy is the currency. It is energy, an exchange in energy that is building that bond. And it is an exchange, a back and forth. That doesn't mean it's going to be equal exchange. It does not mean that you get to decide what that equal exchange means. I really specify this when dealing with guides. They are not slot machines. You don't get to determine what that equal exchange is, but I can guarantee you it's there. If you are building in an equal exchange, you give, they give. You give, they give. And it's in different ways, and it's in different modes. When you're in teaching mode with them and they're teaching you, their exchange, what that exchange can look like is they're giving you the guidance. They're giving you the tools. They're giving you the things that you need. They're helping you learn how to develop and hone those skills for this, what the lesson they are teaching. And your exchange is doing the work, putting in the effort, putting in the time, putting in the energy. So there's always exchange. This is the currency of nature. Energy, vibration, and frequency. Tying it to voice, action, thought, and emotion. These are all energy. This is how we build bonds. It's how we break bonds. It's how we shift and move bonds. And so when you're thinking about the web from a magical standpoint, nature has its own rules. Nature has cycles and patterns that it is consistent in. The pattern itself is consistent. How that pattern moves, what the outcomes are, those can be shiftable. So when we're doing a spell for something, what we're actually doing is shifting and moving that energy. We are making some bonds stronger, some bonds weaker. We're blending some together. We may be breaking some in order to create a different outcome. That's what we're doing in magic. It's what we do in our own personal growth. And it is what nature's doing all the time. It has its set little circular cycle pattern that it's playing in. But there are so many things that can be moved, choices that could be made, energy that can be shifted or woven or blended or destroyed in order to create different outcomes of the cycle. There are static parts to it, things that you won't be able to change because it's part of the core of that cycle. So you're not changing the ball itself when you're thinking about this as the ball being a cycle. So you're not changing the ball itself. What you're doing is shifting and changing all of the little energetic nodes that are streaming out of that ball and directing them in the way that you want them to go. One of the things when thinking about this and in concept and in practice, we have this idea that intention is everything. And I hear it often in a lot of spaces that intention is everything. And I think what they're really driving at is you don't need a bunch of tools. You don't need a bunch of physical items and things like that. But it's not just your intention. When you think about abundance, everybody's all, just think yourself as abundant and you will become abundant. But they're not really telling you the process of that. And it can be really hard when you're in a crisis situation to keep your thought process in that abundance. What you're doing with the intention, you're not changing reality with the intention itself. You're not changing the world, your world, the reality that you are experiencing with just the intention. What is happening is a process. You shift your mind to that intention. You feel that intention. You feed it with emotion. And you are constantly shifting your mode to abundance. As you're doing this, you are reshaping your mind, what it is processing, what it finds important. Through this, you are reshaping how you are seeing and interacting with your reality. The changes that happen in that seeing and interacting with your reality, from that perspective of mind, your actions and your reactions to what is happening, positive and negative, doesn't matter here. Your actions, reactions, your thoughts, and your emotions are changing. Your reality has not changed yet. You've changed. You've changed how you're processing the information. You changed what you're focusing on. You have changed your perspectives, which in turn changes your actions and reactions. And it is in that, your actions and reactions, that movement, that you reshape and change your reality. It is through that that your outer world actually changes. The reason we need to understand these aspects of the web is because this is what we deal in. This is all living side. So all of our living life, all of our living reactions, all of the actions and motivations and the reality of our world lies on the web. Every spirit realm is connected to the web, thus we can connect to it. Some are less, which makes it harder and takes more time and concerted effort. Some of them are really close, and so they're easy. They're the mode that, you encounter first because they're so close. And our plane's already so deeply connected to their plane. And thus, it's easier to travel there. It's why you see very common similarities between different fae. And I'm using fae in the term of, the unseen, not just Irish fae or Celtic fae, but unseen people, entities, spirits. And then some people that go deeper and explore out farther encounter different ones. So they become the less common, but we still have stories. They still have experiences there. So keep in mind that everything you're doing in your living and everything you're doing in your magic, everything that you are doing from an internal and external, it's all energy. Thus, it's all connected to the web. You are a pattern in yourself on the web, and you are determining what bonds you're feeding with your energy, your thoughts, your emotions, your voice, your actions, and what patterns, other bond modes that you're lessening that connection. It is very much conscious choice. It is very much a choice. And when you talk about ancestral soul, the patterns they were deeply connected to, you have a deep connection to that too. That's why when you're drawn to something, when you really feel pulled or something really moves you, it is this mode. It may not be this life, but ancestral soul has a connection, and there's something in this life that you need that connection for, and so it's trying to pull you in that direction. That bond is super strong for a reason, and it's going to be useful to you now. So pay attention to those things. Think about it in that concept way of web. When you're thinking about magic and spell work or spell crafting or ritual work, you are shifting and moving the strings on the web to create whatever it is you're trying to create. So the well. The well deals in soul only. It is what happens after the body has died and before the soul is reborn into a new body. It is the spirit aspect. First, we need to talk about mystical experience. Mystical experience, whether you call it mystical experience, whether you call it trance, whether you call it spirit walking, whether you call it, anything that you're dealing in soul and spirit. Any information you're receiving, downloads you're receiving, experiences you're having, places you're going, you are always going to process it in the way that your brain can process. In familiar kinds of concepts, familiar kinds of modes, and even expectations can shape what that looks like. The thing I have learned through all the years of my study and listening to people's experiences and listening to all these really old, historic, written, documented, however you want to look at it, stories from mystics, from shamans, it all can look very different on the surface. Our mystical experience is how we process. So the imagery, the layer, the outward shell of it can look very personal. But what I find is truly interesting is when you really start looking at them and comparing them, especially when they're talking about same kinds of modes, and we'll get into that a little bit with NDEs, when we're talking the road of the dead, they, at the core, are telling the same story. They're giving the same kind of understanding, a wisdom, a lesson. It's just we receive it different. So when you're sharing with each other your experiences, and when you're listening to other people's experiences, realize that the surface may look different, especially if you're taking a very specific journey together. So when we do the road to the dead, we are actually going to take a journey to the road to the dead at the end of the personal journey part of this course. When we do that, I am going to guide you through. But what you see and experience, what it looks like to you, may be different. When you go journeying on your own afterwards, it may shift and look different. That's okay. The big thing is the core things of the road, which we will talk about today. They're going to be the same. You're going to encounter them. Whether you encounter the first guardian as a wolf, or whether you encounter the first guardian as a snake or a person, doesn't really matter. The trial of the first guardian is the same. So keep that in mind as we walk through this and as we go through the well. What I am going to be sharing is what I have seen, what I have experienced, and what that looks like to me, what shapes it took, and how my mind perceived that with the language, the understandings, and my own perceptions. So the well itself is the place of death and rebirth. The road to the dead is where we learn all the skills necessary to complete the work in the well. I'm going to start with the well, and then we'll go to the road of the dead so you can understand the skill process. And we've talked about this a little bit with reapers. So once you have made it through the road to the dead and you've gotten into the well, this is where our keepers take their role. And in the keeper role, they are just there to support, encourage, and, be a help and a guide, but they're not going to be the same kind of guide as a reaper. It is a different mode from them because they can't tell you how to do the work. You have to do the work. All they can do is shift you a little bit, give you a little bit of guidance, give you a little bit of perspective. When you're in the well, this is where you are judging yourself. What the well looks like to you is going to depend on what you perceive, what you think this afterlife looks like. That is why there is a really dark portion of the well. And it is sad, and it is cold, and it is dark, and there are parts of it that are fiery, and I'm kind of thinking that's the Christians. But it really would be like a Christian hell. The well didn't create that. The people that are there are creating that because as they're judging, they feel they deserve this. And so they're trapping themselves in that space. There are other people that, it looks like, their home, their neighborhood, their village, a village. Maybe they're really fantasy. And so maybe they've created this kind of vision of what they think that afterlife is going to look like. I really believe what we believe at the moment of death, the actual moment right before we die, when we believe that's going to look like, I think that is the shape that it takes in the beginning. Now, it does change shape as we move through because we're judging our life. We're looking back and we are doing our own judgment. What were the things that were good? What were the things that, were bad? Where did we grow? What is holding us back? This is the time we're really doing that honest reflection. And we're also trying to heal. Because anything that does not get healed in the well is carried forward as an ancestral curse to the next. We carry that damage to the next life that we're going into, because that damage, just as well as all of our positive aspects, our negative aspects also get blended into the ancestral soul in the well. Through this process, as we go through and process these parts, as we judge ourselves, as we heal ourselves, when we're completed with each part, it's getting absorbed into the ancestral soul part, the part that's going to live on, the part that's going to be carried forward. The self soul does split in the well. It doesn't grow anymore. It only really seems to know what it knew in its lifetime. And so for me, I call it an echo. It's like an echo of the person that's left over. And I'll be really honest, I don't know exactly what the self soul does long term. Does it just kind of hang out? Does it just kind of live as this holographic echo? Does it create a world for itself? Does it go in spirit form and go to other worlds and have different experiences? All kinds of possibilities. I don't know that answer. If that's really interesting, maybe it's something that you'll explore. Maybe it's something you'll get answers to. I'm not always going to have the answer. But I know that this split happens. And I know the self-soul doesn't, when you interact with it, that echo, when you interact with the echo of the self-soul, it doesn't give you any other information besides about its life. It doesn't give you really any information about its time in the well. It doesn't give you any information about anything, experiences afterwards. It just gives you its life. Sometimes it may allude to some aspects of the well, but it's not really going to be very detailed, and it's not really going to be giving you information. The ancestral soul, when this process is completed, will move on into another body. It will be reborn back into another body to do another life, to acquire and become legacy again. It is a process that goes on and on. One of the things to think about when it comes to ancestral soul, again, remembering what we heal in this living life gets healed for ancestral soul. What we heal in the well gets healed for ancestral soul. What we come to terms with, how we grow, how we move in this life and in the well, changes ancestral soul because of that blending process. So that's really the work of the well. In the well, they're doing that honest reflection. They're doing that judgment of self. They are forgiving themselves and healing themselves and trying not to carry forward any more harmful baggage, and at least trying to get all the big stuff and doing that splitting away. Another thing to think about when it comes to the well, again, you're doing the judging. There's nobody else judging you. You're judging yourself. What you see there, what you experience there, what that looks like, the shapes that it takes as you move through the process, that's you. You're creating that. And when you deal, if you are one of those people that are going to work within the well to help people in this process, to help those souls as they go through the process, then you will see this kind of vision that they create for themselves. There are clues and keys in that vision that is going to help you to identify what is going on internally with that soul, what their well looks like, the things that are within the well, even minute little details can really help you in the process of helping that soul. Time you spend in the well. So nobody has a set specific time. You know, it's not like you were here for 10 years and then you get to move on. It's not really how this works. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. There are some people that, you know, may spend 6 to 10 years of our way of thinking of years. Time does not work the same there. But say we're thinking 6 to 10 years from our perspective, and that's, you know, how long one person gets through. Another person may be there for 20 or 40 or 50 of our years. I do think there becomes a point where when you stop actively doing the work, then you get to this, what you may consider like a stuck point. And then at that point, you're done. You'll just rebirth and you'll carry your baggage. So one of the things about doing this process of personal path, of learning how to do shadow work properly in this life, in the living life, how to heal, how to forgive, how to have compassion, how to see perspective, how to understand duality. All of these things are lessons that are going to help us get through the well. It's going to help us heal as much as we can heal. It is going to help us move faster. If you have never learned the lessons that you learned for the road, what our reapers teach us. If somebody never goes through that, they never learn those lessons in their life, they're going to spend a lot of time on the road because they're going to have to learn these skills. They're going to have to learn these understandings, and they're going to have to learn the skills before they can get to the well. Otherwise, if they get to the well, they're just going to be a spinning top. A keeper is not teaching these things. A keeper is just to help them kind of keep moving, stay motivated, comfort them, be there, and protect them while they're in that space. Sometimes protecting them from themselves, but still, that is a keeper's role. Keeper is very much kind of that motherly, that protective, that place to help you have enough space to do that kind of work, because it's not easy. But if you're not ready, if you don't have any inkling of how to do this kind of work, how to, you know, do honest reflection, how to, you know, at least see yourself honestly in order to judge, in order to have compassion, in order to have courage, then you're not going to be able to do the work in the well. That's why there's a road to the dead, and then there's the well that you actually do the work, and then there's a rebirthing. This is the process of death. This is that transformative section of death. So when we talk the road to the dead, again, I'm going to go through my imagery, how I see these things. Your imagery may be different, but the core is going to be the same. So when you start, there is a tree. You are above ground and there is a tree, and there is all these kinds of writings on the tree. It could be in English, your native language, whatever that is. It can be runes. It can be pictures. I see it as a tree. You may see it as a stone. That's surface level material as far as, the surface, the covering of what it looks like. But the meaning's going to remain the same. You may see it as a crystal ball, and all these things and images come up inside of it. That tree is your life in reflection. It is showing some of the highlights, the choices, the movements, all the things that you have done. It's not going to show it in a way of interacting with it. It's just kind of like looking at a photo album. And you go back and you see, oh, I remember that. Oh, I remember that. Kind of a thing. It's putting these things back into your mind. It is putting specific things that you either need to work through or you need to remember as you work through. Things that are going to give you strength. Things that are going to help you. It's not just bad stuff. You got lots of good stuff on that tree too. Really positive things. Love you felt. Bonds you had. The tree is a story. What's written on the tree is a story. This is your life tree. There is a route that you will go down that leads to a well. The well, I see it as a well. Some people may see it as a river. It is a mode of transportation from the living to the dead. It is that in-between space. There are people that when we hear NDEs, people see, you often hear it described like this. People see a bright light and then they see tons of people all around them. Old family members, people that love them, relatives, all these things. This is what happens in the well in the cave. Again, it is not so much that this is what you're experiencing are these people. Some may be, sure. But for the most part, they're reflections. They're the people that, as we move from the well down into the cave, they're the ones that are giving us. So it's like that tunnel that people talk about. That's the well going down into the cave. When you get into the cave, some people see it as a brilliant blue light. Some see it as a brilliant white. Some see a cave with a lit up pool of water. So like a underground pond or a lake, or however you want to visualize that, or however you conceive of that. And it's looking into the water, and what's reflected off the water are these people. Again, it's from us, but they're there giving us encouragement. We're on the path. We're there. They're going to walk with us, not in a way of being able to help us on this, but in a way of we're not alone. There are other things that you can see in that light or in that pool. You may see other reflections of yourself, good and bad, depending on what you're looking for, depending on what you're focusing on, and depending on what you're bringing forward in that. the pool or the light. It's going to show you what you need to see in order to start the journey. There's another tunnel going out of the well in the cave, the cave area. So there's another tunnel, and you're going to encounter your first guardian. That first guardian is going to test your perception and your judgment. I'm not going to tell you what it is right now. You'll find out when we do the Road to the Dead. But that first guardian tests how you perceive and judge other things according to your perception. So first guardian tests perception and judgment. If you cannot get past the lesson of judgment, then you are not going to pass that guardian. You are going to have to stay in that area until you learn and understand perception, what perception means, the lessons in perception, and how that shapes judgment. Once you get past the first guardian, you get to a field of light. The field of light lays everything bare. There is no shadow. There is nothing. It is nothingness as far as you can see. It is just a completely lit up space. This is lighting up all the things you don't want to see. This is lighting up every shadow, every fear, everything. It is illuminating everything. When you get through that and you learn the lessons of being able to do that honest look, and that's really what the field is about, being able to look at it honestly. Yeah, I made this mistake, and I know how it turned out, and I know that, what I learned from it, this is what I learned. So not totally, it's not a failure. I learned something from it, but there is pain there. There's regret there. There's sorrow there. And, it's being able to learn that honest reflection and how to do honest reflection. Once you do that, then a dark forest appears. It is gnarly and it is dark and it's scary as all get out. Because welcome to facing fear. You honestly reflected, and you know how to do this now. Now it's time to face the things that you are afraid to face. It is a time for courage, to learn courage, to move in spite of the fear, to move beyond it. Then you come to a river, a very noisy, very rapid, there is absolutely no way that you can cross this river without, being pulled through the current and plopped back out at the very beginning of the journey. There's a bridge, and on the other side of the bridge is a really big wall. That wall is the wall to the well. And there's a gate, and it's the gate to the well. That's how you get there. First, you have to cross the bridge. There you will meet the second guardian. Again, that second guardian is going to test your perception of heart and how you face challenges, how you face battle. You are not going to pass that guardian until you have learned and are able to move through those lessons. And you'll learn those lessons from the guardian as your approach. Dependent on what your approach is dependent on the lessons you're going to learn. Once you get past the second guardian, at the gate you encounter the third. The third guardian keeps out unwanted living. So there are people that just want to, tap into the well, go into the well. They're not prepared for the well. They don't have the lessons to understand and treat people in the way that they need to be because they're in the well working. We've got a lot of people on this side. When they lose somebody, they are grieving hard and they want time with that person. They want one more conversation. They want one more But it's all from a perspective of them. It's not to help their dead. They want it for themselves. They are missing, so they want that interaction. And the dead is doing the work right now. They're in the well. They're really trying to focus on their own judgment and healing and moving forward. If we, the living, are constantly going into the well and messing with them as they're trying to do that work, we not only slow them down, but we can derail them completely. Especially people that have bad intentions. Not everybody that wants to talk to their dead wants to do it in a way of forgiveness and compassion and love. They want to confront them. They want to know why they did something. They want to, and this is punishment to the people in their well, because they're already facing this. They're facing their own perspective of that and their own guilt and their own pain. And so us as living going in there and, why did you do this to me? That's damaging. Thus we have a guardian to keep out unwanted living. There are certain ways that we have to approach people when we are working in the well. There are certain respect aspects. There are certain modes of things we can and cannot do. There are a lot of rules for the living when we go into the well to help in the well. And that's one of the things that the road teaches us. It's what our reapers teach us, but it's what our keepers teach us. So when the keepers are teaching the living, they're teaching them the lessons and things that they need in order to be able to have that interaction and not be a damage, to not derail them, to not prolong the process. Be really honest. Hell has been mad for a really long time because there's such a backup in the well. And if you go in there and you experience that, you will understand it. There are so many people that are having such a hard time getting through these processes that they are just getting stuck. And the well is just getting fuller and fuller, and people aren't moving the way that they're supposed to move. And it just keeps getting worse. And there's all kinds of reasons for it. Our perceptions around death are one of them. The way we move in our living life is one of them. The societal conditions are one of them. But and the ones that are getting out, they're getting out with way more damage. They're not supposed to be carrying forward this much baggage. But they're not able to work through it, and they're not able to get through it, and they don't even have the capacity to really get there. And so the well is getting overwhelmed. If you talk to Hell about it, she'll tell you. If you talk to any of your keepers, I'm sure they will tell you. And I know if you talk to Akara, she is one of those that works within the well. She can tell you her experience. Ask her about the waiting room. So, yeah, I mean, the last guardian has a very, very strict kind of aspect of who's allowed to enter and who isn't. The other aspect that last guardian teaches us is courage. Moving despite the fear. And facing the unknown with courage, with hope, and with love. As I said, when we close out this part, we will actually walk the road to the dead together. You will meet these different guardians. You will really get a different kind of sense of feel of each of these processes along the road. And then if you are going to be one of those people that actually works within the well, that is something separate. I'm not taking anybody into the well. Again, there's a guardian there for a reason. Your keepers are the only ones that can allow you access into the well. Last part I'm going to say about our dead. When they're in the well, there are times where they go back and forth. So you may get a dead relative, somebody that's recently died, somebody that's, died in the last 10, 20 years. They may come to you and they may have a conversation, or they may want to heal something, or they may want to tell you something. A lot of times this is because of work they're doing in the well, and they have things that have to be said. They have things that need to be healed. And so they're coming for that reason. If your loved one comes to you, that's fine. Let them come. Have that conversation. Do not pull the dead to you. Your grief is hard. But if you are pulling them, they will feel that pull in the well, and you are going to distract them. They're going to come. Not all, but a lot will come at the call. If you're calling really hard to them and they're feeling that, they will come because you need them. But you can do a lot of damage to them. Do not pull your dead. Give your dead love. Give them courage. Give them energy. Give them peace and healing. When they show up, listen. Interact. Whatever you need to interact at that time. Work through whatever needs to be worked through so they can move through the well. When you are dead and in the well, you are going to want the same respect. Because the well's not easy. It's hard. It's not fun all the time. You have really fun moments. It's not all bad. Don't think it's all bad. You relive some amazing moments there, and there are some really happy, joyful that happens in the well. But there's also a lot of dark that you got to work through because you got to heal. So you don't carry the baggage. So we don't keep producing damaged souls from the get-go. The more they don't work through, the more damaged they are when they first get here, the more damaged they become during life, the more they have to work through in the well. And if they don't learn it the next time, the more damage and more damage. We end up with a lot of broken people. So just things to keep in mind, things to consider. All right, let's open it up for discussion.